"Sir, I'm sorry, but we don't serve people like you here." Kai Musk, dressed casually in a plain hoodie and sneakers, stood stunned at the waiter's cold dismissal. It was supposed to be a quiet dinner outing at an upscale restaurant, but the judgmental glance from the waiter's narrowed eyes made it clear that his appearance didn't match the clientele they expected. The restaurant exuded luxury. A chandelier sparkled in the dimly lit space, and the low hum of polite conversations filled the air. But for Kai, the atmosphere turned hostile in an instant. Other diners turned to look, whispers spreading quickly across the room. "Maybe you'd be more comfortable somewhere simpler," the waiter added, his voice dripping with condescension. Kai's hands tightened into fists, but he kept his composure. "I have a reservation," he said firmly, sliding the confirmation email across the counter. The waiter barely glanced at it, his disdainful smirk remaining intact. Just then, a tall figure stepped forward from the shadows of the entrance. Elon Musk, Kai's father, had been watching the interaction from a distance. He was dressed just as casually, his presence understated yet commanding. "Is there a problem?" Elon asked, his voice calm but firm. The waiter faltered for a moment, realizing who he was speaking to, but quickly regained his arrogance. "No problem, sir. It's just, this young man doesn't seem to fit our usual clientele." A tense silence fell over the room as Elon's expression hardened. "I see," he said, looking at the waiter intently. Without another word, he placed a reassuring hand on Kai's shoulder. "We'll stay. Let's see how this plays out." As the father and son made their way to a table, whispers grew louder among the patrons. Who was this man? Why did he seem so familiar? The waiter, visibly annoyed, reluctantly escorted them to a less prominent corner of the restaurant. Kai looked at his father, his face a mix of embarrassment and anger. "Why are we staying?" he whispered. Elon gave him a faint smile. "Because some lessons need to be taught the hard way." The tension in the air was palpable, and all eyes were on the Musk family as they settled into their seats. What Elon planned to do next would leave the entire restaurant in complete shock. As the waiter returned with menus, his dismissive attitude hadn't changed. He placed the menus on the table with a loud thud, barely making eye contact with Kai. "Let me know when you're ready to order," the waiter said coldly before walking off. Kai clenched his jaw, his frustration barely contained. "Why are we just sitting here, Dad? This isn't right." Elon leaned back in his chair, completely unbothered by the icy treatment. "Patience, Kai," he said calmly. "Sometimes it's not about reacting. It's about observing." Kai's eyes scanned the restaurant. The other diners avoided looking directly at them, though their murmurs and sideways glances betrayed their curiosity. Kai felt humiliated, but his father's steady demeanor stopped him from storming out. Moments later, the waiter returned, his fake smile plastered across his face. "Have you decided?" he asked, his tone dripping with sarcasm. Elon placed the menu down without looking at it. "We'll start with your most expensive bottle of wine," he said smoothly, ignoring the waiter's obvious disdain. The waiter hesitated, clearly trying to gauge if they were serious. "That's $8,000 a bottle," he said, his voice laced with doubt. Elon didn't flinch. "Perfect. Bring two." The waiter froze for a second, then nodded, realizing he had no choice. As he walked away, Kai looked at his father in disbelief. "What are you doing?" he whispered. Elon's lips curled into a faint smile. "We're teaching him the importance of respect, but we're going to do it on our terms." As the expensive wine arrived, the atmosphere in the restaurant shifted. The same diners who had been quietly judging now watched the scene unfold with growing interest. Some whispered, trying to guess who this mysterious father and son were. The waiter poured the wine with reluctant precision, clearly uncomfortable now. Elon raised his glass, looking directly at Kai. "Cheers," he said, "to patience and knowing when to make your move." The waiter poured the wine with reluctant precision, Clearly uncomfortable now, Elon raised his glass, looking directly at Kai. "Cheers," he said, "to patience and knowing when to make your move." Kai hesitated before raising his glass. "Cheers," he replied, still unsure where this was going. But as the waiter turned to leave, Elon leaned back in his chair and said, "Oh, and one more thing." The waiter paused, his shoulders stiffening. Elon continued, his voice calm but authoritative. "Make sure to treat us with the same respect you show your wealthiest patrons. It's good for business." The waiter's face turned pale, and for the first time, a hint of regret flashed across his expression. Little did he know, this was just the beginning of a lesson he'd never forget. Don't miss what happens next. Things are about to take an unexpected turn. Make sure to like this video and subscribe. The restaurant buzzed quietly with conversation, though all eyes periodically flicked toward Elon and Kai's table. The waiter, visibly flustered, attempted to recover his composure. However, his earlier arrogance had been replaced with an uncomfortable stiffness. Elon, as composed as ever, signaled to Kai to look around. "Do you notice anything, son?" he asked casually, taking a small sip of wine. Kai frowned, scanning the restaurant. "Everyone's staring," he muttered. "Exactly," Elon replied, leaning forward slightly. "People love to watch power dynamics shift, especially when it's unexpected. Remember this moment, Kai. Respect can't be bought. It has to be earned." Before Kai could respond, the waiter returned with forced politeness. "Is there anything else I can get for you?" he asked, his voice strained. Elon studied him for a moment, his gaze penetrating. "You've worked here a while, haven't you?" The question caught the waiter off guard. Yes. Almost 5 years." "Then you should know better," Elon said, his tone firm but not unkind. The waiter's face flushed, and he stammered, I'm not sure what you mean." Kai shifted uncomfortably, unsure of where his father was going. But Elon remained unshaken. When someone walks through those doors, their worth isn't determined by their clothes, their status, or what you assume about them. It's determined by their humanity. Have you forgotten that? The waiter opened his mouth to respond, but no words came out. The weight of Elon's words hung heavy in the air. Before the waiter could fully process what was happening, the restaurant manager appeared, his face pale with worry. "Is there a problem here, sir?" he asked, his voice laced with anxiety. Elon turned his attention to the manager. "No problem at all," he said smoothly. "We're simply having a conversation about the importance of respect." The manager's eyes darted nervously between Elon and the waiter. "I sincerely apologize if anything has been amiss. Your experience here is our top priority." Elon waved a hand dismissively. "Let's not make a scene. Just ensure your staff is reminded that assumptions can lead to lost opportunities." The manager nodded quickly, his relief evident. "Of course, sir. I'll handle it personally." As the manager and waiter retreated, Kai leaned in, his curiosity piqued. "Why didn't you just tell them who you are, Dad? It would have solved everything." Elon smiled faintly. "Because that's not the point. It's not about who I am. It's about who they are. Their behavior shouldn't change just because they know my name." Kai sat back, his father's words sinking in. But as he glanced at the entrance of the restaurant, his eyes widened. A man in an expensive suit had just walked in, and his expression changed the moment he spotted Elon. The plot was about to thicken, and Kai had no idea what was coming next. The man in the expensive suit walked briskly toward Elon's table, his polished shoes tapping rhythmically against the floor. He was clearly someone of importance. His confidence and tailored attire screamed authority. Kai's curiosity grew as the man approached, a wide grin spreading across his face when his eyes met Elon's. "Elon, it's been ages," the man said, his voice booming and drawing even more attention from the room. Elon looked up, a flicker of recognition crossing his face. He stood and extended a hand. "Richard, it has been a while." The two men exchanged a firm handshake before Richard gestured toward the table. "Mind if I join you for a moment?" Elon nodded, pulling out a chair for him. "Of course. Kai, this is Richard Caldwell. He's an old friend, and one of the sharpest minds in renewable energy." Kai nodded politely, though he couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just a casual meeting. Something about Richard's timing felt too coincidental. "I didn't expect to see you here," Richard said, leaning back in his chair. "I'm meeting a client, but I couldn't pass up the chance to say hello." His eyes flicked toward Kai, curiosity in his gaze. "And this must be your son. You've grown, young man." Kai gave a small smile, unsure of what to say. Before the conversation could continue, the waiter returned, his demeanor now completely transformed. "Mr. Musk, is everything to your satisfaction?" he asked, his voice dripping with politeness. Kai stiffened, sensing the shift in tone. Elon didn't answer immediately. Instead, he turned to Richard with a knowing look. "Do you notice how quickly attitudes change when titles come into play?" Richard chuckled, shaking his head. "Ah, the double-edged sword of fame and power. People rarely see you for who you are, only for what you represent." The waiter, clearly uncomfortable, tried to regain control of the situation. "If there's anything I can do to make your visit more pleasant, please let me know." Elon tilted his head thoughtfully. "Actually, there is. Do you treat all your guests with the same level of care, or does it depend on who they are?" The waiter froze, unsure how to respond. The entire restaurant seemed to hold its breath, waiting for his answer. Kai leaned closer to his father, whispering, "Dad, isn't this a bit much?" Elon gave him a calm look. "Kai, sometimes the lesson has to be uncomfortable for it to stick." Richard, clearly entertained, leaned forward. "I have to say, Elon, you always did have a way of making people think twice." The waiter stammered out an apology, but Elon waved it off. "Just remember, every person who walks through those doors deserves your respect, whether they're a billionaire or someone struggling to get by." The waiter nodded quickly and retreated, his face flushed with embarrassment. As the tension in the room began to ease, Richard leaned in conspiratorially. "By the way, Elon, I heard about your latest project. Word on the street is you're about to shake things up again." Elon smiled faintly but didn't elaborate. Instead, he glanced at Kai. "You see, son, respect and humility are two of the most important qualities you can have. But sometimes, you also need to know when to make your presence felt." Kai nodded slowly, the lesson sinking in. But just as he thought things were calming down, Richard added, "Oh, and Elon, you won't believe who's heading this way right now. Let's just say your presence here has caused quite the ripple effect." Kai turned toward the entrance, his heart racing as he saw a new figure enter the restaurant. "Don't forget to like and subscribe to find out what happens next. The story is just getting started, and the twists will leave you speechless." All eyes turned toward the entrance as the figure walked in, their presence commanding immediate attention. It was a woman, her elegance and confidence undeniable. She was dressed in a sleek black outfit, with a poise that suggested she was someone who didn't walk into rooms unnoticed. Kai squinted, trying to place her face. He leaned toward his father. "Dad, who is she?" Elon's eyes narrowed slightly, a hint of recognition flashing across his face. "That's Lydia Morgan," he said softly. "She's the CEO of one of the largest AI development companies in the world, and a former business rival." Kai's eyes widened. "Rival, like she didn't like you?" "Let's just say we've had disagreements," Elon replied cryptically. Lydia approached their table, her heels clicking against the floor like a metronome. She stopped in front of them, her sharp eyes scanning the trio before landing on Elon. "Musk," she said coolly, offering a small nod. "Lydia," Elon replied, his tone neutral but firm. The tension was palpable, and Kai could feel the weight of whatever history they shared. Richard, seemingly enjoying the unfolding drama, raised an eyebrow but stayed quiet. I heard you were in town, Lydia said, her voice as composed as her appearance. I didn't think I'd find you here of all places. Elon gave a faint smile. Even billionaires need to eat, Lydia. What brings you here? I'm meeting investors, she replied, her gaze shifting briefly to Kai. And I see you've brought your protege. Kai straightened up, unsure if her comment was a compliment or a jab. His name is Kai, Elon said, his tone protective. And yes, he's learning the ropes. Lydia tilted her head, studying Kai for a moment. Well, Kai, if you're anything like your father, I'm sure you'll make quite the impact someday. Let's just hope you do it with a bit more finesse. Kai frowned, unsure how to respond, but Elon leaned forward slightly, his voice calm but pointed. Lydia, if you're here to trade barbs, you've chosen the wrong setting. Let's not forget who walked away from our last disagreement with the upper hand. Lydia's lips curled into a sly smile. Touché, Elon, but don't get too comfortable. The world moves fast, and even you can't predict everything. The two locked eyes for a moment, the unspoken tension between them thickening the air. Then Lydia's demeanor shifted slightly, her tone softening. Still, it's good to see you. Even rivals can respect each other's work. With that, she turned and walked toward a private dining area, leaving the table in silence. Kai let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. Dad, what was that about? Elon gave a small chuckle, shaking his head. Lydia's always been an enigma. Brilliant, ambitious, and a little too focused on winning. But she's right about one thing, this world moves fast. You have to stay ahead or you'll get left behind. Richard finally broke his silence, laughing softly. Elon, you've always attracted the most interesting people. I don't know if it's a gift or a curse. Kai glanced between the two men, feeling like he was getting a glimpse into a world far more complicated than he ever imagined. Before he could ask more questions, Elon's phone buzzed on the table. He picked it up, his face darkening as he read the message. It seems our lunch just got a lot more interesting, Elon said, his tone serious. Kai leaned in. What is it? Elon put the phone down, his expression unreadable. Let's just say we're about to get some unexpected company. Before anyone could process Elon's cryptic words, the waiter returned to their table, visibly uneasy. His hands trembled as he placed a fresh plate in front of Kai. The young Musk noticed the waiter's face was flushed, his confident smirk from earlier completely gone. I apologize for earlier, the waiter stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. He refused to meet Kai's eyes. Kai glanced at his father, unsure of how to respond. Elon's expression was unreadable, but his silence seemed to carry an unspoken command. Let the man speak. I didn't realize who you were, the waiter continued, his words tumbling out in a rush. I made assumptions, and I was wrong. He hesitated, looking directly at Kai now. I'm sorry for treating you unfairly. No one deserves that, no matter who they are. Kai shifted uncomfortably in his seat. He didn't know whether to accept the apology or call the man out for his earlier behavior. But before he could decide, Elon spoke up. It's not about who we are, Elon said, his tone calm but firm. It's about how we treat people. Titles, wealth, status. They don't define a person's worth. Remember that. The waiter nodded quickly, his face red with shame. You're right, Mr. Musk. I'll do better. Elon gave a slight nod, dismissing the man with a wave of his hand. The waiter retreated to the kitchen, leaving an awkward silence at the table. Kai sighed, running a hand through his hair. That was intense. Richard chuckled, shaking his head. The poor guy looked like he was about to faint. I guess he learned his lesson. Elon leaned back in his chair, his gaze fixed on Kai. People will always judge you, son. Sometimes it'll be because of your name, and sometimes it'll be because of who they think you are. The important thing is to stay grounded and let your actions speak for you. Kai nodded slowly, taking in his father's words. But before he could reply, a loud commotion erupted at the front of the restaurant. A man burst through the doors, his voice booming. "Where is he? Where's Elon Musk?" The room fell silent as everyone turned to see the newcomer, a stocky man in a disheveled suit, his face flushed with anger. He stormed toward their table, his eyes blazing. "Dad," Kai whispered, his heart racing. Elon remained calm, his gaze steady as the man approached. "Well," he said quietly, "it seems our unexpected company has arrived. Don't forget to like and subscribe to find out what happens next. What's this man's connection to Elon and why is he so furious? Stay tuned." The man slammed his hands on the edge of their table, his breath heavy and his glare fixed on Elon. The entire restaurant watched in stunned silence, the clinking of cutlery and murmurs replaced by a tense, uncomfortable quiet. "You think you can just walk in here, throw money around and get away with everything?" the man growled, pointing a finger at Elon. Kai flinched, instinctively leaning back while Richard sat frozen, his eyes darting between Elon and the stranger. Elon, however, remained composed, his expression calm, but piercing. "And you are?" Elon asked, his voice steady but cold. The man scoffed, straightening up. "You don't even remember, do you? Of course you wouldn't. I'm Daniel Hargrove. 5 years ago your company fired me. No explanation, no warning. You destroyed my career, my family, my life." Kai's eyes widened, glancing at his father for a reaction. But Elon's face remained unreadable, his gaze locked on Daniel. "I'm sorry to hear about your struggles, Mr. Hargrove," Elon said evenly. "But I can assure you any decisions made were based on professional grounds, not personal." "Professional?" Daniel laughed bitterly. "Is that what you call ruining someone's future? You have no idea what it's like to lose everything because of one man's decisions." The tension in the room was palpable. Waitstaff huddled near the kitchen, unsure whether to intervene, while diners whispered among themselves, speculating about the drama unfolding before them. Kai felt a knot tighten in his stomach. He wanted to defend his father but wasn't sure what to say. The intensity of Daniel's emotions was overwhelming, and he could feel the weight of the accusations pressing down on them. Elon finally stood, his towering presence making Daniel take an involuntary step back. "I understand your anger, Mr. Hargrove," he said, his voice calm but firm. "But coming here and causing a scene won't change the past. If you're looking for closure or justice, this isn't the way to get it." Daniel clenched his fists, his face red with frustration. "You don't get it. You'll never get it. People like you think you're untouchable." Elon's eyes softened, and for the first time, there was a hint of sadness in his expression. "I don't think I'm untouchable. In fact, I know better than most what it's like to face hardships, setbacks, and judgment. But I also know that holding on to anger only drags you down further. If you want to move forward, let's talk, not as adversaries but as people." Daniel blinked, caught off guard by the sincerity in Elon's tone. For a moment it seemed like the anger in his eyes flickered, replaced by confusion, or perhaps doubt. Before he could respond, the waiter from earlier reappeared, holding a tray with trembling hands. "Excuse me," he said nervously, addressing Elon. "Sir, I just wanted to say thank you for teaching me a lesson I'll never forget. I promise to be better." Daniel looked between the waiter and Elon, his expression shifting. It was clear he hadn't expected to see this side of the man he'd come to confront. Elon nodded at the waiter, then turned back to Daniel. "The choice is yours. We can talk and find a way to help you rebuild, or you can keep holding on to this anger. But one path will take you forward, and the other will keep you stuck in the past." The room held its breath as Daniel stood frozen, torn between his rage and the unexpected olive branch being offered. What decision will Daniel make? And how will it shape the rest of the story? Don't forget to like and subscribe to see the powerful conclusion. For what felt like an eternity, Daniel stood motionless, his fists gradually unclenching. The storm of emotions within him was visible on his face, Anger, regret, and uncertainty, all competing for control. Finally, he exhaled deeply, his shoulders slumping as if surrendering to a weight he'd carried for far too long. "Talk?" Daniel muttered, his voice quieter now. "What's the point? You can't change what's already been done?" Elon stepped closer, his tone unwavering but kind. "No, I can't change the past, but I can help shape your future, if you let me." Daniel hesitated, his eyes narrowing as if searching for signs of insincerity. But Elon's calm, steady gaze seemed to disarm him. Slowly, he nodded. "Fine, let's talk, but don't think this erases everything." Elon extended a hand. "It's not about erasing, it's about starting over." As the two men shook hands, the room erupted into applause. Patrons and staff alike cheered, the tension melting away into an air of relief and optimism. Kai couldn't help but smile, pride swelling in his chest as he watched his father turn a moment of hostility into an opportunity for growth. Richard leaned over to Kai, whispering, "Your dad's something else, huh?" Kai nodded, his admiration for Elon deepening. For the first time, he saw his father not just as a billionaire or inventor, but as someone who genuinely cared about people, even those who resented him. Moments later, Elon and Daniel moved to a quieter corner of the restaurant, engaged in an earnest conversation. The waiter, now emboldened, approached Kai and Richard with a sheepish grin. "Hey, I just wanted to say sorry for how I treated you guys earlier," he said, his voice trembling. "I let my judgment get the better of me and it wasn't right." Kai smiled warmly. "It's okay. Everyone makes mistakes. What matters is what you do after." The waiter looked relieved, nodding gratefully. "Thanks. And your dad? He's incredible. I've never seen someone handle a situation like that." As the evening progressed, the atmosphere in the restaurant transformed. Conversations buzzed with positivity, and people exchanged stories about how the events they'd witnessed had inspired them. Before leaving, Elon returned to the table, his expression thoughtful but satisfied. "Ready to head out, Kai?" he asked. Kai stood, his eyes shining with newfound respect. "Yeah, Dad, let's go." As they walked toward the exit, the restaurant manager rushed over, stammering apologies and insisting the meal was on the house. Elon simply smiled, declining the offer. At the door, Elon turned back one last time. "To everyone here tonight," he said, his voice carrying across the room, "let this be a reminder. Kindness costs nothing, but its impact is priceless. Thank you for allowing us to share this moment with you." The room erupted in cheers and applause, the sound following them as they stepped into the night. Once outside, Kai couldn't contain his curiosity any longer. "Dad, why did you leave such a big tip earlier? I mean, I get the lesson, but $1 million, isn't that too much?" Elon chuckled, placing a hand on Kai's shoulder. "Sometimes, son, it's not about the money, it's about the message. People remember moments like these, and if it inspires even one person to choose kindness, then it's worth every penny." Kai nodded thoughtfully, realizing there was much more to his father than he'd ever understood. As they climbed into the car, Richard piped up from the backseat. "So, dinner tomorrow? Same place?" Elon laughed, the sound warm and genuine. "Maybe not the same place, Richard, but wherever we go, let's make it memorable." And as they drove off into the night, Kai couldn't help but feel that this was only the beginning of his journey to understanding the values his father stood for. Moral: kindness and humility can transform even the most challenging situations. When we treat others with respect and compassion, we create ripples of positivity that can change lives, including our own. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more inspiring tales.